I'm ready when everybody else is. Yeah? No, we had Shakespeare. Yeah. I think, well, you can't really tell from our calendar because our calendar is so different than the Roman calendar. Even the Romans didn't know about the Roman calendar. It was so difficult. There were Ides and Kalends and Norns, and each did a different demarcation of the month. All right. We're beginning a whole new series on a whole new topic. And we are again using Shakespeare as a springboard. We will launch into a new theme and into whatever else we can get launched, either mystical or astrological or psychological or philosophical or whatever topics along the way. It's fun, fun, fun. Again, we're not trying to put words in Shakespeare's mouth, but we will note when he is correct. We are not using Shakespeare to substantiate either mysticism or me. Neither need it. We both, mysticism and I, both have to stand on our own merits. And of course, not everything is going to be about Shakespeare. And not everything is going to be about any specific brand of mysticism. In some cases, not even mysticism per se. Our goal is to get at that at which mysticism points. Reality is better than any philosophy or any system that points to reality. Again, there will probably be a very strong emphasis on the values and the character prerequisites to mystical experience. Everything said will be of me, and unless I state otherwise, and I'm willing to take full responsibility, and I would appreciate feedback when I am in error, and any kind of feedback of anything you'd like to include in these talks. The topic for this new series is going to be magic, and the series is going to be called Magic Black and White. And the plays we're going to be studying with are Macbeth first and The Tempest next fall. And by the term magic, we don't mean something inexplicable, something that is a violation of the laws of nature or what are called the laws of nature. Instead, we're trying to come to a higher understanding of the principles behind outward creation, especially trying to get at the principles that are antecedent or precedent to the things that happen in this world, which are what cause the changes. A big part of it is trying to understand those principles and the forces that they use as they're found inside of ourselves. We can't do any magic with anything outside of ourselves without doing something inside of ourselves. So, we're going to work on becoming creative free agents within the greater creation. Magic is not a violation of law and logic. It's just an expression and a use of higher law and logic. We're going to discuss two different outlooks on magic: black magic and white magic. The forms of the two are often very different from each other, but not always. Sometimes they're very similar in the way they function. The primary differentiation between Black magic and white magic is motivation. Black magic connotes dark, selfish motivation, often with some kind of nefarious purpose behind it. White magic connotes something clear and open and beneficent with little or no secrecy at all. The highest form of white magic is adoration, the universal spirit. Well, I'm not sure we'll get to that until way into the tempest. These are very simple distinctions for the time being, and we're just let them stand at that for now and continue on. Now, in terms of logistics, because we spent so much time on Hamlet, and it was worth every bit of it, we're going to have difficulty fitting everything in the remainder of the semester. Things work really, really well. We'll get everything in. If they don't, we may have to have very long talks, or we may have to add an extra talk or so toward the end. This means we're going to have to do what we're always doing anyway, and that's going to be cutting, because you can't say everything you want to say. So for the next 5 weeks, we're going to try and do one act per week, as we've been doing it. Reading, and then having running commentary, and every now and then a little side mini talk. And then we'll have one talk that speaks about the major theme at the end. And I think that'll get everything in just right. Anybody have any suggestions of any kind? I'm open to them. All right, who wants to be a witch? All right, you're the first witch. Who wants to be the second witch? I'm going to have to go out and buy a bunch of books. All right, Millie, you're going to be the third witch. All right, read the whole theme through. Yep. Yes, that's all right. These lines recall a theme. What's really nice about this now that we can go back to themes that we've looked at before, and that we can look at them now. Only we can look at them with greater depth and carry our thought further, which is really, really nice. It's a topic we've talked about before, how paranormal or uncanny experiences occur during unnatural circumstances. In the case of Julius Caesar, when people were coming out of the graves and lions were roaming the streets, there were earthquakes and everything else. The truth of the matter is that paranormal or big-time psychic experiences rarely occur at midday. Almost never in bright, clear, sunny days. If the lower experiences, like most of Macbeth is filled with, the energy from the sun on a bright sunny day is energizing the ether so much, and they're so active that they're in a high energy kind of state. And involuntary clairvoyance, or people who have not yet been able to bring their clairvoyance up to full speed, have difficulty at higher pitch of light. This is why so many people, especially involuntaries, need subdued light, or they need dark light to do something. the energy itself, right within the ethers, is polarized, very much different in low pressure than it is in high pressure systems. For most people, the large majority, the ionization of high pressure air is tingly, it's fresh, and it's clear, and it's thoroughly benefic to people's health. Everything twinkles more. The stars twinkle more, and people's auras twinkle more. Now, since the ethers are part of the physical plane, rarer even than gases, but not so rare that they don't apply to all of the laws of the physical plane, the ethers are subject to gravity. We know that in the famous experiment that Einstein suggested that says light waves bend around stars, and under eclipses this has been proved that the ether that bears the light and the light itself gets bent going around the star. So even our subtle etheric bodies must be subject to greater or lesser pressures. So in lower barometric pressure, where there is less density, less gravitational effect, the tendency is for the aura to get spaced out and not to be completely in one's control. Low pressure air is usually accompanied with moisture. Now the light ether, we know, is associated with the twinkliness of the stars, and it's more active in clear, dry air. But the life ether is closely associated with water. So hence there is something of a rich life ether aura in the air in low pressure, especially moist air. When such an atmosphere is prevalent, there's life everywhere. Moss grows on trees and on stones, and even cliff sides are alive. So there's plenty of free life energy. Now, some of the life is brought down from the outer etheric atmosphere through the condensation itself, and there are fertile elements in the nitrogen gets fixed onto oxygen that is freed in the electrolysis process when there is lightning. So a rainstorm is a very rich fertilizer kind of situation. Now, if somebody is not a creative agent capable of focusing the energy that comes from the sun through one's own soul body, it's much easier to steal and to effect phenomena in low pressure than it is in high pressure. So consequently, we find places like Brazil, for example, just being rife with all kinds of mediumship and magic, things like that. In the United States, in New Orleans, that kind of thing is very much in the air. The surly tempers are not just due to temperature changes, they're due to what is available in the air. So you can learn a good deal just by paying attention to your own moods and what you feel in the atmosphere. What is really a perfect time to learn about the psychic atmosphere and how you respond to it is one of those times when there's a severe low that's followed very swiftly by a high pressure zone that comes in. You know, like it goes from raining and the temperature drops something like 20 degrees in an hour's time. There you get a really clear, it's sort of like walking from the sunlight into a dark room, something like that. At this time, we're not going to talk about the three riches and who they are or why there are three of them. We'll talk about that in a later talk. But there are some interesting things here. The witches are called to from their animals. Like in line 7, the cat Graymalkin calls one of the witches. And that seems rather unusual. But there is a term for that. An animal that accompanies someone, whether it is an earthbound entity or a mediumistic person or a magician or somebody like that, is called a familiar, which is short for a familiar spirit. And that being possesses and inhabits the body of an animal. And the familiar is usually a somewhat nasty but also potent and knowledgeable dark spirit that's earthbound one way or another, and it's easier to stay here if you have a body to be at. And cats' bodies are most frequently used for that. The familiar spirits are familiar with the workings of the lower realms, and they know how to manipulate them. Their motivations are selfish and sometimes pointless. It's just like they're at home here. They're not even interested in something like a heaven realm, something like having artistic experience or having a creative thought life or anything like that. They want to be around here because this is where the action is for them. And they often pursue dark ends, sometimes just for mischief. Sometimes they like to have a lot of blood be let because they can draw a lot of energy, etheric energy, as it flows off of the blood. They like cats. Cats, like sheep, are ruled by fiery sign animals. The sheep by Aries, the cats by Leo. Many societies knew about this, probably none more than the Egyptians. The cat's body carries a large charge of etheric energy. Even Huck Finn knew about the cats and large charges of energy. In Northern Europe, the priestesses, when there were ceremonials, used to wear gloves, but sometimes entire clothing that were made out of cat skin. Toads, on the other hand, like Paddock, on the following line, line 8, are ruled by Saturn. Saturn, as we know, is the life and death opposite of the sun. It's not very often that a toad is used as a familiar spirit. Usually toads are used for other reasons. They're used because they're psychedelic and they have the ability to put one in touch with the inner worlds. It's one of those fads that one hears about, that licking toads can get you high. And it was a big fad in the late 60s of people swallowing the pineal glands out of toads and getting high and doing all sorts of things like that. So it produces, so the references to toads are the references to selfishness and also to psychedelic things. In this opening scene, the thing that is there are 10 lines and 20 minutes of talk. I'm shameless. Is that we get introduced to inversion. We look at line 4 right away in the beginning. When the battle is lost and won. And then later on in, especially in line 10, foul is fair and fair is foul. Everything is backwards. That kind of backwardsness, they have done studies on it. Psychologists have done, the good news, bad news kinds of jokes. They've done studies on that, and they find that if you introduce bad news before you introduce good news, the effect of the good news is diminished significantly. Whereas if you give the good news first and then the bad news, you put somebody in a state of mind that they can sustain the bad news and the good news is completely lost. So this is, I don't think it's just reasons of rhyme that he puts like in line 4, that he puts when the battle's lost and won, he's talking to put the losing first. It's there for to sort of open us up to the whole idea of inversion, to get things backwards. The whole of our fall in the Garden of Eden story, our divine disobedience, is getting it backwards in that it's putting the cart before the horse. It's putting us of supreme importance rather than the universal spirit. All right. Scene 2 is shows the political setting. And the political setting parallels the storms in scene 1. And what is happening is that there are wars of rebellion and wars of invasion that are sweeping across the land just like a storm. We're told that MacDonald and the Irish are attacking from the west until Macbeth and Banquo and their armies overpower them, especially due to the fearless warriorship of Macbeth. And at that time, then the Norwegians attacked from the east. And they attacked with great might and with great numbers. And they're led by the King of Norway and by the Scot, the Thane of Cawdor, who has turned traitorous. And they almost prevail until Macbeth defeats the Thane of Cawdor and takes him prisoner. And the whole scene ends with King Duncan, after he's been told the story of what has happened, he sends a messenger to Macbeth saying to him that he is now the Thane of Cawdor. There's just a few pretty lines. I'll just read them myself. The description by the captain. The king asks him when the Norwegians attack, he says, "Dismayed not this our captains, Macbeth and Banquo?" The captain says, "Yes, as sparrows, eagles, or the hair of the lion. And I say, sooth, I must report they were as cannons overcharged with double cracks, so they doubly redoubled strokes upon the foe, except they meant to bathe in reeking wounds or memorize another Golgotha, I cannot tell. But I am faint, my gashes cry for help." What a lovely way to say it. Pretty, pretty words, even though it's describing something difficult. The scene is meant to set a mood that are very of the times and the place that are very unstable. Things are uncertain. It's like there's a civil storm that goes along with the nature storm. And in that civil kind of situation, the same kind of setting prevails. It's a place where courage or cunning or something like that can take advantage. Scotland, and all of the British Isles for that matter, in those times were something like Sri Lanka is now. There's wave after wave of invasion. Population pressures or adventurism or whatever just comes waving over. England, which began as a Welsh Celtic nation, just got overrun by people after people after people. From the south, they came from France and Germany, and from the north, they came from Denmark and Norway, and all over. So it's setting the stage. The whole scene sets the stage for what is going to happen psychologically as much as politically. For us, the physical plane is something like that. It's an ultimate frontier. It's the no man's land between the known things of the inner spiritual world and the unknown, which could be, about which we're in complete darkness. These are the far reaches of the concentrated consciousness of the universal spirit. It doesn't go much further than this into the unknown. So it is something like that. And it's something like our own concentrations. When we're concentrated, as much as we can concentrate, hold as much as we can at the fringes or at the extents, when we're out there as far as we can go, it's choppy and it's uneven. There are gaps and there are openings. There are energies that are lost and released in the battles of the element that seem to go entropically back into chaos. And so this is the land of opportunity, an opportunity for whoever dares to seize the time. And that includes the witches as well as Macbeth. All right, let's start on the next scene, scene 3. Let's start with the same 3 witches. Let's read all the way down to about 38, where Macbeth and Banquo come in. This is there's just so much in this scene that we're going to pass on a lot of it. And we can't say it all. We'll be here all night and we wouldn't get anywhere near to the act. But the scene is important and it shows some of the characteristics of how most people get into sorcery or black magic. These people are obviously small-minded, spiteful, selfish, and everything is need. Moreover, they're earthly, and they seek material ends. So it's a very petty kind of self-seeking. If they are thwarted in their little desires, they take it very, very personally, and they want the satisfaction of revenge. Revenge is in the lowest part of the desire world and the easiest part to get satisfaction in. Psychologists of emotionality claim that the two strongest emotions are found at the two ends of the desire world. Only they don't use the word desire world. They say that love, sacrificial love, at the top of the desire spectrum is potent, very powerful, probably the most powerful of all, because it extends to other people and takes them in. And at the other end, vengeance, especially if it is racial or religious vengeance, type like we find in Northern Ireland or something like that. But those are the most powerful emotions of the low variety, at least. And so they want satisfaction. It's a funny thing that these are knowledgeable beings. If you're doing magic, often some of the lower grades of black magic are done by poisoning yourself right to the edge of death in order to pull yourself or force yourself out of your body. And any time that black magic is performed, there is always a recoil. What you put out is what you get back. So very often, people who indulge in black magic get a double whammy. They have to come back to a near-dead body and be hit by the recoil of their own magical activity. And one learns one's limits. It's just the opposite of spiritual growth. In spiritual growth, there is no limit to what you can do. You can keep growing and growing and growing. So like if we look on about line 24, where she says, though his bark cannot be lost, yet shall it be tempest-tossed. She knows that she can't overstep her power. She can't sink the ship. That destiny doesn't allow that. But she can still have her satisfaction by making it miserable for someone. Moreover, she puts herself out there as saying, I've got this pilot's thumb. And it could have been a pinky, could have been any of the fingers, but it was the thumb. And the thumb is what makes humans' life divine. All of the other planets, the other four fingers, are ruled by the planets. The thumb represents the things that separate us from the animal kingdom: will and reason. And in this case, having the thumb to hold up is a statement saying, my will is stronger, I have prevailed, and this is my proof of that. Now, black magic almost always mimics white magic in some way or another, and in this whole passage that we've just read, it is clear that they're drawing directly from white magic. Black magic mimics or apes white magic, but it always changes some little detail. And in this passage we find 9 repeated again and again and again. The manifest spirit in 3 dimensions is 3 squared, or the number 9. And so we find so many things spiritually being stated enneatically, and even the witches' curses, which are done rhythmically. They're done for the sake of chanting. They're using tone power. They're putting something into the ethers. It isn't just sing-song poetry to make, hey, isn't that neat what Shakespeare did? That's the way enchantment works. Ancient forms of meditation, out of which our modern poetry has come, were things like mantras that were chanted, that set up tone power in the air and in the ethers and built something up in a powerful way like that. It's probably most likely that the witches, when they form their circle dance and start twirling around toward the end of this passage, they probably go counterclockwise. I don't know why there is the allusion to Syria. Aleppo is in Syria, and the Tiger in there means the Tigris River, which runs, I think it runs all the way up into Syria and then down into Iraq. I don't know why that illusion is there. There may be something that, that is an opening for something. Sailing on a sieve means to say that's an incomprehensibly subtle vehicle. It's referring to being able to make some kind of a soul trip to pass through the fluid element that we can see, water, in that the body can pass through water and water can pass through it when you're functioning in the soul body. Again, we have the bad news, good news thing again on line 38. Who wants to be Macbeth? Tim, you want to be a Macbeth? All right. Who wants to be Banquo? Shard, you want to be Banquo? Mill, you want to lend your book to Shard? All right. Read all the way down to just read to the end of Banquo's speech. Beautiful description. The witches are probably skinny for the same reason ascetics are skinny. All of the energy is bent into higher things, or into the inner world, I couldn't call black magic higher things, and it's all done for the sake of discipline. In order to accomplish magical things, you have to be extremely, extremely disciplined, whether it's black magic or white magic. They're attired strangely. We're not told exactly what that strange attire is, but that's probably some kind of allusion to the desire body. You find mummies in Egypt having all kinds of, the cases that hold the mummies, all kinds of flashes of color in them, just like the desire body. I don't know why they are bearded. It's probably not because they're androgynous. If they are human, we don't even know that they're human. But it could be due to some kind of endocrine manipulation. It's clear that in Shakespeare's time, hair was considered excrement, and it certainly connotes animal primitivity. Banquo's next speech. Why do you start in get two points of the name of truth? I don't need to read this book. They make the picture of the truth. But you see less the thought. You speak not. You can look at you can look into the field of time, say which rain will grow, which will not. You tell me, I guess we should have the witches read in between there. But in between, the witches have proclaimed that Macbeth is going to be Thane first of Glamis, or which he was to attain anyway. He knew that. But then he's called Thane of Cawdor, and then finally he's called King of England. And Banquo in this speech is commenting first about the strangeness of Macbeth. He sees fear in Macbeth, but the fear in Macbeth is not of the witches. He's just been told he's going to be the king. Why should he be afraid? What appears to be happening is something that happens to someone who is not aware of their inward consciousness. It's very much like what happens to an alcoholic on taking a first drink. Alcoholics' lives can be changed forever with one drink. I've talked to people that have had that experience, and the moment they had that experience, they knew that they were something different, and they knew that they were in trouble. You look at the world differently ever after. I had a friend that was an alcoholic, and at one time we were walking down the street at a street fair in Tucson, Arizona. All kinds of pretty things in stalls and pretty things walking down the street and everything else. And he was walking down the street looking at the scuzzy alcoholic reaching into the garbage baskets along the way and getting the little bit of beer that was in the bottle. And he turned and he said to me, he said, I saw myself in that. He said, I said, that's me in a few years from now. He understood his alcoholism. He knew that, it's as if something had been opened up inside him. He thought, in fact, he actually did drink himself to death before 40. Suggestion has sunk into the very marrow of Macbeth's desire nature. And previously he saw himself as a lord with some kind of inheritance, and certainly as a great warrior, but with the suggestion of the Weird Sisters, his drink is ambition. And everything that involves the fulfillment of that ambition. He's afraid of what goes on inside of himself. Some people, introverts, are afraid of things outside in the world. Those chocolate bars have power over me. There's something outside. Extroverts are afraid of what goes on inside of them. They get shook. They don't like to be around people who are thoughtful, or people who are intuitive, or are inwardly feelingful. They feel uncomfortable. They want to be partying, and they want to have all kinds of sensational experiences outwardly. So it's not the predictions that counter Macbeth. It's the underlying motivation, that desire for power, that ambition to be on top. That is what he begins to know when the prediction takes place. Banquo is a healthy kind of person. He doesn't have that dark substratum inwardly. Macbeth is not only an extrovert, but what is inside is not in a healthy state. He can, and in that latter part of that speech, he talks to the witches outright. And he does it with neither praise nor recrimination. He doesn't do anything to overwhelm them. So he's not moved in the same way, even though he's been told that his progeny are going to become kings. Let's see. Let's read the next speech of Macbeth, down at line 70 to 85. It says, "Stay, you imperfect speaker." enough right there. At this point, I just want to talk about that speech of Macbeth at the end there. Macbeth doesn't know how weak he is yet. He doesn't know how much he fawns after power. He tries to command the witches, or at least it appears that he's trying to do that. He's trying to be commanding. But the opposite is what the truth really is. He's questioning not because he's seeking deep answers like Hamlet would seek, or like Oedipus or somebody like that asks the hard questions. He's asking the witches questions because he wants to hear it over again. Flattery and glamour are not far away from the kind of ambition that Macbeth is subject to. He wants to hear it all over again. He wants the explanation. He's sort of like an attention addict. He wants that for himself. This whole time in the interaction with the witches is a moment of conversion from an outward man to a realization of something inside of him, something that has power over him, but in which he himself is really very weak, and that's what the conversion is all about. The lines from Banquo talking about interpenetration are very, very pretty. Let's see, in one more thing in there. Where he talks of, it's in Banquo's next speech after that. Were such things here as we do speak about, or have we eaten the insane root, or that which takes the reason prisoner? The insane root is mandrake, mandragora. It's sometimes called Satan's apple, and it's sometimes called the insane root, which is part of the belladonna family. It's a very, very difficult plant to grow. It's said to like to grow under gallows where murderers have been hung, but it has a very bad reputation. It is the ancients used to use it as for biting the bullet. If they had to do surgery, especially on the battlefield, they took hunks of mandrake root and they put it between someone's teeth, and they would bite the root so that they wouldn't bite their tongue or that they wouldn't hurt themselves. But the effect of the mandrake was that it was mildly anesthetized the person. They had to be very careful, because if you take in too much mandrake, what happens is that you lose your memory, and often you don't get it back for years. It's quite an interesting thing. And it could produce all kinds of psychedelic states, and it was associated with doing magic and things like that. At this point, the Ross, the envoy from the king, comes, and he proclaims that Macbeth is Thane of Cawdor. And Macbeth questions him in the same way and for the same reason. Macbeth, you want to read that out to the end, line 45 to the end. I'll read the Ross and Angus in between, and Charlotte will read the we'll read the rest. Where are we here? We're at line 117. Macbeth says, Glamis and Thane of Cawdor. It's right after the speech by Angus. You guys got different books than I have. I'm gonna have to get a whole pile of books. I'm thinking for next fall I'll do that. Glamis. Go on to the part of Banquo. As the scene progresses, we see that even though he's struggling with it, Macbeth is becoming more and more under the spell of desire, high desire. He's not thinking of the huge responsibility he would have if he were king. He's not thinking of the good of the country. He's only thinking about himself. Again, it's a matter of empty glamour. Banquo even describes him as being withdrawn. He's withdrawn and he's living in some in some form of entranced desire-like state. And that's really important because that is what magic is all about. It's about desire. What allows or what drives magical acts is desire. Somebody desires something very intensely, and that motive force propels these simpler forces of nature. And so what is happening is he's become inwardly a prisoner of his own desire. The events may be foregone conclusions, but Macbeth, in his desire, is feeble about either resisting or even controlling his own desire nature. He's passing from a state of consciousness from the kind of consciousness that Banquo has. If it's going to happen, let it happen. But Macbeth is progressing to the point where he's saying, I'm going to make this happen. If we're not conscious of our desires, especially our unregenerate desires, they will take over autonomously. If you watch things that are the normal petty subjects of desire, food, most people don't eat consciously. They're not watching how they're chewing or what they're doing. It's a very autonomous act. We try to cover all of our desire up because we don't want it to show. And by that same act, we sabotage our own ability to be able to control those desires and bring them to full consciousness. So in this world that we're in right now, there are all kinds of gaps, and there are all kinds of possibilities to change destiny. But we have to be free people to do that. If we aren't free people, we become the pawns of whoever can manipulate desire. And that is what's happening with Macbeth. Scene 4 is a very quick scene-setting scene. It opens with the king and his sons, Malcolm and Donald Blaine, and they're discussing the death of Cawdor. He's just been put to death, and they're discussing how his character was noble and the trust that was placed in him, and all of the royal kinds of greetings are passed when Macbeth and Banquo enter together. And the king mentions that in his sorrow he's going to name his eldest son, Malcolm, to be Prince of Cumberland. Macbeth excuses himself and says he has to get home to prepare his castle because the king is coming there to visit. And when he's alone, he talks to himself, and we can see already that his desire has very much changed. He says to himself, the Prince of Cumberland, that is a step which I must fall down or leap, for in my way it lies. Stars, hide your fires. Let not light my black and deep desires. The eye at hand, and yet that be which the eye fears when it is done to see. So he's turned to blackness. He's turned to darkness. What happened there? Millie, do you want to be Lady Macbeth? Read lines 16 to 31 in the next scene. We're now in scene 5. Don't take the line. The scene opens where she's reading a letter from Macbeth where he describes what the witches have said. We're not so much interested in that. We're interested in the part where she talks to herself after she's read the letter. Around line 16 where it says, Glamis thou art, and Cawdor, and shall be, from there. it's often said, it's even a folk statement, we marry more what we aren't than what we are. That is especially true in marriages of youth, before we have begun to develop our own inner nature and the latencies that are in us that require time and experience. We often choose what those latencies will become and marry that person. It is not uncommon to marry somebody who is strong in the polar opposite of our strength, the polar opposite in which we are weak. It happens, and it happens frequently, that introverts marry extroverts. I have a friend that is a very studied introvert, and her partner is an extrovert. She says he gets up in the morning, he's cheery and happy, and he whistles, and even before he has coffee, she can't stand it. And they get into conversations, and in a spooky way, he looks at her and says, "You know everything that's going on inside, don't you?" And he's as much aghast at that as she is aghast at his outwardness and all of that kind of physical cheer. It's probably that we sense a need in ourselves, and we seek someone that can fulfill that need. And so we fall in love, and that falling in love is really a love for what we don't have yet. And we then feel whole when we have that in another person. Now that can work out if both people grow slowly, and if the marriage is compartmentalized or departmentalized or something like that, and each person has a valid part of the economy of the family, and each one appreciates the other for their validity. That's not the way it is in a lot of modern marriages. Nowadays we seem to grow very swiftly, and there certainly isn't a lot of compartmentalization. And probably the only compartmentalization that's left is childbearing. Everything else is pretty much shared. A polarized marriage can still work in our society if the opposite takes in us, and that is an introvert becoming more extroverted and an extrovert becoming more introverted. That's healthy. That can take place. If not, it's in trouble. Lady Macbeth thinks she has the kind of marriage where she is the inner opposite. She probably never studied any psychology, but she's not without psychological insight. And she seems to think that her husband is ethically and inwardly soft. We've already seen it in the preceding scenes. He is soft. The least little suggestion by the sisters, and he's off and running with his desires, but it isn't strong what he has inside. So she sees her role as being his opposite, and that she has to fortify him as if she were coming from within. Lady Macbeth is also a Saturnian individual, but a far different kind of Saturnian individual than Hamlet was. Hamlet judiciously weighed every little issue and was aware of all the responsibilities that were involved, the hidden responsibilities. He was aware of them to a fault. Lady Macbeth, like her husband, even though one tends to be more extroverted and one more introverted, is led by blind ambition. She sees the worldly gloss and glaze and glitter of regal power. But she's completely purblind to the pitches that are underneath. Hamlet is like a Libra Saturn. Lady Macbeth is like a Capricorn Saturn. Now that's not to say that all Capricorn is worldly and exterior, but if one gets into that Capricornian mode, the glamour of worldly fame and power is one of the temptations of Capricorn. In that speech, she has all of the straight line efficiency. He doesn't know the shortest path to get there. She's going to have to teach him the shortest path to get from one place to another. She also has the Saturnian cold-bloodedness that is necessary to carry it out. Why don't you read the next speech, 39 to 58. The raven himself is hoarse. She's talking about, she's preparing herself. The messenger has just come in and is telling her that Macbeth is coming and that the king is coming. And then she first replies to him and says, "Give him tending, he brings great news." And then the speech is what we're interested in. Yeah, what a speech. Sorry I had to lay that on you. That's yes. This is probably where Poe got his quote, "The raven nevermore." Ravens like crows were said to be birds that talked, only that everything that they brought was bad news. This play, all of three of the previous plays that we've looked at, The Winter's Tale, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and Hamlet, both had a lot of plant and flower lore in. This has almost no plant lore in, except for the mandrake root. But in its stead, it has bird lore. So tonight we get to look at bird lore a little bit. To the Norse, the raven was a mercurial bird associated with Odin or Wotan, and it was a tattle-tailed bird. Wotan or Odin had two ravens. One came out and went back and forth, and they kept telling him everything that was happening everywhere in the world. England was much more like Greece and most of the ancient world, and in those countries, rooks and ravens and crows were all Saturn birds. And they had some meanings such as longevity and trust, but mostly the raven was a bird that was a harbinger of death or morbidity or something of that nature. They were indiscriminate carrion eaters. Crows, you can see right in town here, will even eat rotten flesh. Appropriately, to many peoples of the world, the crow or raven represented the devil. Now, in this little speech, the crow-laden speech or the raven-laden speech of Lady Macbeth, at first it sounds like she's giving herself a pep talk. It's more than that. It's almost magic itself. It's auto-suggestion. We say a lot of things to ourselves, and we think that we're just talking, but they do come back at us. All words, especially words that have been carried out to be spoken, are the receptacles of thought. And all thoughts are the receptacles of spiritual truth and creative power. So when we say words like that, we're emanating something of great potency. I have never yet encountered the words of any seer that didn't talk about the enormous potency of what we think and of what we say. Almost everyone to a person says, if you could see the results of your thoughts and the results of your words, you would suddenly change your thought and speech patterns very quickly, because you wouldn't want those. These are almost like invocations that she's making. She doesn't chant them out the way the witches do, but she's saying them with full emotion. And that again is the driving power of black magic. She doesn't know what she's doing fully. First time you get into black magic, I myself, as a very young man, did something sorcerous, and I didn't know what I was doing. It took place in a thunderstorm, and it didn't involve the witch, and it got me exactly what I wanted, which I later very much lamented. But when I did it, I didn't know what I was doing. I knew it was magic, and I knew you could do things like that, but I didn't know it. She knows enough that she's trying to turn off her own intuition, her own conscience. She doesn't want those things. She even wants to deny her sex. That is, she doesn't want her positive vital body being struck with all of those intuitive hits or those conscience hits. She calls on darkness to conceal everything. She even wants her blood and milk to change, to become thicker, and to become more earthy and less gaseous. She doesn't want anything life-supporting. She wants darkness. Isn't it interesting that our fall puts us in darkness? Even though we think it's light and that we can see things here, we're like just looking at a moving wall, nothing more. It's not like the lucid light in the inner spiritual worlds. She wants that darkness to come down. She doesn't want to face that other kind of light. So she doesn't know it, perhaps, but what she's done is an act of unconscious black magic. Yeah, that's the fine. We'll go along with it next way. She greets Macbeth, and she requests information of the coming of the king. I'll continue reading on from about line 62, where she says, she starts with, shall sun that morrow, oh, never shall sun that morrow see, where she's talking about the future of the kingdom. Well, pretty clear who wears the pants in this family. She's in charge. She knows that she's in charge of everything that's motive. She turns out to be very Capricornian. She tells them to practice deceit. And she tells them exactly how to do it. And when she does so, she does something that Capricorn does better than anyone else because it really appreciates it. It is appeal to classics. For centuries, maybe for millennia, the classic image for deceit and illusion is always an innocent-looking flower with a serpent underneath. You have that in India too, right? It's a classic image of deceit. Yeah, I think it goes so far back I don't think anybody knows. She urges yet another classic. She tells him to put on the poker face. Capricorn, two-faced Janus poker face. The next scene, scene 6, is just a greeting of the king. And in it, Lady Macbeth practices what she preaches. She acts just like she stepped off the welcome wagon and tries to make everybody feel good. There's only one item of interest in that scene, and that is Banquo's speech. And it says, "The guest of summer, the temple-haunting marlet, does approve by his loved machinry that the heavens beneath smells woolly here. No jutting frieze buttress, nor coign of vantage, but this bird hath made his tended bed and procreant cradle. Where they most breed and haunt, I have observed the air is delicate." We're talking about bird lore again here. We're talking about the martin. They call it the marlet. And the martin sort of represents something like the opposite of the ravens. So light, bright, beautiful character that it has about itself. It stays only during the hottest months of summer. It's one of the first birds to leave. And Banquo's statement about they like to be where the air is fresh and they like to be around nice people. Perfectly true. Two martin experiences. Once, as a youth, I killed a martin. And it is something that I have hated in myself all of my life. I think I am forgiven, but it was really, really a hard thing when I realized what I had done. My other experience with martins is they are very choosy where they roost. For years I rode along the shore drive back and forth to work, and everybody puts out martin houses. And the reason they put out martin houses is because martins eat tons of mosquitoes. But the martins are very fussy. They want a clean house, and they want a house that no other bird has ever been in, and they want to be around nice people. If I were in trouble, I could tell you which houses on Shore Drive I would go to, because some of the martin houses have been taken over by sparrows. Some of them the martins come back to faithfully, and the people can't figure out why the martins won't come there. They're very, very picky. Aesop, in speaking in bird lore, ancient Greek bird lore, said that the martin was the first animal to discover bird lime, or glue that was used to catch birds so that they could be eaten. They would take twigs where birds like to land, and they'd put a glue on them, and then the bird would land, and they would grab it because it would be stuck there. And the martin tried to warn all of the other birds, and all of the other birds laughed at it and basically drove it away. And at that, the martin came in supplication to the humans to be their warner of who was good and not good. And they were accepted, and ever since then, martins have not been killed or used for food or anything like that. So in the language of birds, this act is a transition from martin consciousness to raven consciousness. Let's see. So we can move along faster here in the last scene. I'll read the Macbeth part very quickly. Read the first 28 lines. If it were done when 'tis done, then 'twere well it were done quickly. If the assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with his surcease success, but that this blow might be the be-all, end-all, but here upon this bank and shoal of time we jump the life to come. But in these cases we still have judgment here, that we but teach bloody instructions, which being taught return the plague to the inventor. This even-handed justice commends the ingredient of our poisoned chalice to our own lips. He's here in double trust. First, I am his kinsman and his subject, strong both against the deed. Then as his host, who should against his murderer shut the door, nor bear the knife myself. Besides, this Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek, hath been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like angels' trumpet tugs against the deep damnation of his taking off, and pity like a naked newborn babe striding the blast, or heaven's cherubim horsed upon sightless couriers of the air shall blow the horrid deed in every eye, that tears shall drown the wind. I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other. What has happened is that Macbeth has left the king sitting at the table, and he's gone off by himself and he's talking to himself. Macbeth is probably also Capricorn. He draws on a much different side of Capricorn. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and Macbeth is that kind of Capricorn. He is valiant, he's undaunted, he's field master. That's all outward. When he's outward, he may look great. In the battle, he's fearless. He knows how things should be conducted. Now, when we see when he's alone, he's pensive, he's weak, he's vacillating on his resolve. He comes up with alibis, which just happen to be quite logical. Capricorn is very much aware of time in the matter of forethought. So he's aware of the consequences of deeds and of justice, even human justice. But he's not inwardly strong, and he's got all of these excuses. And even though he has these reasons, he isn't convicted of them. Lady Macbeth comes in, and the two of them have words. Lady Macbeth, why don't you start out now? How now? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Hath he asked for me? We will proceed no further in this business. He hath honored me of late, and I have bought golden opinions from all sorts of people which would not be worn now with their newest gloss, nor cast aside so soon. Prithee, peace. I dare do all that may become a man, who dares to do more is none. if we should fail? Bring forth men children only, for thy undaunted metal should compose nothing but males. Will it not be received when we have marked with blood those sleepy two of his own chamber, and used their very daggers that they have done it? I am settled and bent up, each corporal agent to this terrible feat. Away and mock the time with fairest show. False face must hide what the false heart doth know. In relation to the inward-outward balance, when we marry what we aren't, this exchange classic. In the field, Macbeth is masterful. Among men, he's unassuming and speaks by his deeds, respected. But his wife, who represents his inner nature, which is ambitious and desireful, but he is soft, in relation to her, he's something different. In some ways, their relationship is just over time. He's off fighting in wars, and conquering and doing all of those sorts of things. And she's at home feeling things through, thinking things through. She knows where everything is at. Since she attacks him on inner grounds, he's no match for her. She holds all the cards. She studied how to play the cards. She's got a plan already made. She knows how it's going to come out. She studied him. She knows just how to do it all. She pushes the cowardice button. The cowardice button is an inward cowardness. It's, like there's no visible foe that he can bring a sword against. And that just disarms him completely. She doesn't try to build up his self-esteem. She tries to tear it down. The more she tears him down, the more she makes a little boy of him that hasn't matured, the more supremacy she has where she can have her ends. She even shocks him. She says, if I had a baby and I knew that baby was going to grow up to be like somebody without resolve, I'd take it right from my breast and dash its brains out. That's a shocking thing to hear. She's seamless. She won't allow for the possibility of failure. We fail, we can't fail at all. And she's got a detailed plan. She's inwardly Capricornian. She's indifferent. She's got an answer for every place, every question that he makes. No match. Before we finish for tonight, I want to go back to something that came up in scenes 1 and 3. It's not a deep topic, but a little something. A topic we've been looking at all along. It started with Julius Caesar, where Brutus saw the ghost of Julius Caesar, but nobody else saw the ghost. Brutus was sensitized by stress and fatigue bothered by his conscience. He was probably a sensitive anyway, being such a philosopher. Whereas Cassius was hard, material, and earthy, skeptical. He couldn't see the thing. In Midsummer Night's Dream, Bottom, when he's under the influence of herbs, an herbal drug, he sees the fairies. In Hamlet, several people see the ghost of Hamlet's father. The ghost will only speak with Hamlet, but he's fresh from death. Very often that a lot of people can see a ghost right after the death. Now we have Macbeth and Banquo both seeing the weird sisters. Beings that we don't even know what they are yet. They could be humans, familiars as cats. They could be newly dead. The legendary idea of hair growing after death. They have beards. Or they could be elementals or some other kind of lower world creature. It isn't a matter that Macbeth and Banquo are fatigued for battle. They don't appear that way. They each have different temperaments, and Banquo doesn't seem mediumistic. Yet they both see, and they both have verbal intercourse with these strange beings. You ask yourself, why is this possible when it couldn't be Brutus and the instances of many people seeing ghosts, especially otherworldly beings like this, is not very easy. The answer to it is probably because they're both Scots. Even though the British Isles were marauded over by all sorts of peoples, Angles and Saxons and whoever all, the kind of double invasion that was in the early part of this act is not unlikely. Despite all of this turmoil, the Scots, especially the Gaelic Scots, were a very stable people. What the opposition means is that internal inconsistency. And that takes away from the appreciation of things. If it's only a world that you control to make things the way you want them to be, there's no satisfaction in that. That has to do more with insecurity. Capricornian insecurity than it has to do with satisfaction in having taken part in the greater evolution and greater nature and its act. Okay. The common material mental bent of both the personality and mentality means a common subjective, earthly, materialistic, or political bias on the world and direct observations of the world, which is likely to be taken in a personal way, and because subjective and repressed, this might be grammatically incorrect sentence, is likely to go beyond conservative to become suspicious and tend toward paranoia. All right, we're saying that both the personality and the mentality are exceedingly earthy, and the ruler of the personality is in the fourth house, so it's subjective. And that subjectivity produces a bias, and the earth is inclined toward materialistic bias anyway. So what this individual sees in the world is likely to be taken in a personal way, meaning to say that this is meaningful, only relevant to me because of this subjective, repressed kind of quality. And that's almost a perfect description, especially when all the Capricorn is involved. That's more than just being conservative and careful. Maybe cautious would even be a better word than conservative in the sentence there. In fact, I would put in cautious. So it goes beyond cautious, and it becomes suspicious. Capricorn suspicious, and it may even become paranoid. All right, now we're headed toward the emotionality sentences. The general emotionality is not likely to be close in strength to the personality, but just weaker and not so integrally bound up in the desire for power. We're saying that the emotionality is weak. Venus